Thing About Cars, a podcast for car enthusiasts and the people who love them.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Thing About Cars. We have a full house today, full group of friends sitting around the microphone today. Ben, are you with us?
Hey, I'm here.
And the one, the only Cathy Poley returning to the show for another engagement. Cathy, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, I'm glad you could do this. Dave, you there?
I am here in every sense of the word possible.
And Dave, would you introduce our guest for today?
I do. We have a friend of mine who I think is going to contribute a lot to this topic. Mary Williams, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome, Mary. And let's just jump right into it. I've got something I think we should talk about real quick, just because it's pressing news. We probably don't have a whole lot to say about it, but I'm looked at an article that today, it was published on Thursday by Gizmodo, and the headline says Shell has reached peak oil production, meaning that Shell says that they're on their way out, that they don't have the oil to sell anymore, and they'll soon be with oil on the declines, as Shell announced that it would achieve net zero carbon pollution by 2050, but it didn't say much about their goals. But oil is on its way out. What do you guys think about that?
Well, it's good news.
It's kind of good news, but that means gas as well, right? No more gas.
I think the thing with oil production and gas, you got to remember that fuel is a lot more complex than just gas. You've got aviation fuel, you've got high performance fuel, you've got diesel. I found the story a little bit lacking in detail in terms of, is it, because Shell's one of the most highly valued companies in the world. I don't really see them saying, okay, well, we're packing up and going home. Right. I was looking for something we're expecting fuel to transition through 20 years of ethanol. And now it may have also been they just decided, hey, we need to get something out to, but no one's going to pay attention because of the impeachment this week anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, and to qualify the good news comment, it's good news for, things like pollution in the atmosphere. It's environmentally good news, at least in the immediate sense of it. Another downside, well, not downside, but another, side of it is that, remember, petroleum isn't just fuel either. It's also the raw material for most plastics, which life is basically not possible without.
Anymore, that's right.
Anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately. So
I have one word: plastics.
Yeah, it'll be a very complex issue. Plus, so many other chemicals that use petroleum-based stocks in their manufacture.
Yeah.
Right. So it'll be a very complex thing, but humanity will figure it out one way or another.
Humanity will figure it out. That's right.
As long as we don't do more damage figuring it out than we did with the petroleum in the first place.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, petroleum was easy, right? Petroleum was just there. It's easy. Now we have to think about it. So.
Yeah.
All right. Our grand trivia auto question. You guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. What did the Olds designation 442 stand for? Oldsmobile 442. So what did that 442 stand for? Did it stand for 4 tires on the ground, 4 front-facing headlights, 2 fun-loving people? Did it stand for 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed transmission, and dual exhaust? Did it stand for 44 miles to go? Or did it stand for 442 laps around an endurance track? So does that make sense? Shall I repeat those?
No, this is a good one.
This is a good one. Of course, my mind immediately goes to they are pro the answer to life, the universe, and everything. They are for 42.
442, exactly.
Yes.
Except the car came out before Douglas Adams wrote that book.
Man. They knew.
It's all part of the mystery. That's right.
It's part of their vision.
And there's time travel in the books anyway, so.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So Douglas Adams went back and whispered to some Olds engineer. He said, hey, do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And crap, here I am sitting without my towel.
All right, so we'll answer that at the end of the show. Let's move forward with our agenda. Dave, you've got a cultural collision that involves our guest Mary today, right?
It does. So again, we want to welcome Mary to this. What we thought we would actually talk about today is, this segment is about the role of different types of cars in American culture. And one that doesn't necessarily get a lot of conversation is the role of the art car. So a little bit of introduction by way of how Mary and I know each other. Mary's sister Libby and I met in grad school years ago and became good friends. And Mary joined the process, the process of being friends. One of the things that is unique about her sister Libby is I generally describe Libby as the human equivalent of a Mardi Gras float. Because, everything is there except someone standing on her shoulder throwing the balloons. Big, loud, over-the-top artist. Whereas Mary is Libby's enabler. So if Libby decides that she wants to cover her pontoon boat in sequins, Mary's who she's going to turn to. And after a long, heavy sigh, she'll say, fine, I'll stop at Michael's after I pick up the marine glue. Mary, would you say this is a fair assessment of your relationship with your sister?
Oh, absolutely. Very apt. I keep saying, she's art, I'm craft. And she comes up with these wild ideas and I get to figure out how to make them work. And it's created some interest in our lives.
All right. Yeah. Mary and I were talking the other day about just cars and topics and art. This was after we had built an enormous 16 by 16 concrete twister board in Libby's backyard. And we're talking about art cars, and Mary just happened to let drop that she's customizing a car, or a truck, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But this started me down the path of, I thought that to intro this topic, art cars are the idea of customizing your car for mass population of the public is somewhat taboo. And we don't think this necessarily about decorating our homes, about our wardrobes, about our person. But yet the idea of I may, put an applique or change the paint of my car, or glue an enormous mannequin to the top of it. That raises eyebrows, and so I thought I'd put that question out there to start with: is what is it that we think that makes the car so sacrosanct as opposed to all these other segments of our life?
I mean, I admit it. I think of car modifications as not including a mannequin glued to the roof of my car. If I modify a car, I might tweak the paint, I might tint the windows, I might play with whatever's under the hood. But as far as what's on the skin of the car, it just never occurs to me to embellish that. But,
unless you want to put those god awful flames on the front.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm just worried about resale, which is stupid because I've run every car I've owned into the ground. So, drove it to its last breath, but I'm even nervous to put on bumper stickers. So it's always magnets and decals. So,
yeah.
So what are we talking about here? Art cars?
Yeah, art cars. So there's actually an art car museum. You can find them online. It's called artcarmuseum.com. They actually describe themselves as the Garage Mahal. And this place opened in February of '98. It is in Houston, Texas, and it was founded as a not-for-profit arts organization for longtime supporters of the art car movement. And they have focused on mad car art. They focus on supporting the artists and the aesthetics and the fine tradition of customizing the cars. And as Mary alluded to, at a bare minimum, it was in the 90s, you could put flame decals on the front of your Nissan Sentra or Honda Accord. So, Mary, why don't you talk a little bit about the project you're working on?
Well, so, I hesitate to call this art. It is in a way, but it was art out of frugality. So the vehicle we're talking about is a 1998 Nissan Frontier.
Okay.
That has sat outside all its life. It came to me secondhand. It is, however, now worth twice what I paid for it, but still not worth putting a paint job on. And the paint job that's on there now is flaking off, and you start to see the base coat underneath. And I use it to do things like build a twister platform in my sister's backyard. And so after hauling gravel and everything else that can go in that vehicle, it was like, oh, this is going to rust out and I need to do something about it. And the human Mardi Gras float has she has a bit of a problem. And I'm going to out her here. She's a paint hoarder.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
And I do things to try and mitigate that, because I use her garage for woodworking, which is a whole nother show. So I'm like, well, I really need to get some sort of base on this so the tailgate doesn't rust off.
Right.
Spray paint. And so then we turned it into art and said, this really is evocative of Damian Hirst's work. And this will now be an homage to the artist Damian Hirst.
Now, wait.
So that's kind of,
what does that mean, Damian Hirst? How would I know?
He's a modern artist. He's contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
And he has done a number of different things. I mean, he's been shown in museums and whatever. But he does a lot of work with dots. And he's got some really pretty work. It's all abstract. Or he does big round dots. And that's just, the kind of art he produces. But it is fine art. It's on canvases.
Right.
Not in the bed of a pickup truck. So at this point, I have gotten to the point, because as Dave says, I'm the quiet enabler and I don't go quite as far over the top.
Right.
So right now it's just in the bed. So it's still a white truck, a dirty white truck, but a white truck until you get up in it and look in the bed of it, at which point there's multiple colors and it's not finished yet. It's going to be an ongoing thing.
It's nice and clean and colorful and
it's colorful.
Yes.
Nice and clean is a stretch with this vehicle. This is not my, so I do have to tell everybody that I do drive a real car. My real car is Audi A3, a 216 Audi A3 Quattro.
So Mary,
So I have a real car and I like real cars too.
I have to ask, why don't you just paint the entire Frontier?
We may get there, because I'm the quiet one and I haven't gotten the back of the truck to a point where I know how to do the whole truck without it looking like a Wonder Bread driving down the road. If I want Wonder Bread driving down the road, I will call somebody and get it wrapped.
There you go.
There you go.
I will also point out that when Mary says that her sister is a paint hoarder, it's not just any paint. These are all vibrant metallic pastel tones.
Wow.
In the world of the Williams girls, brown is the enemy.
No, that's only true for the paint float. And I'm really kind of sorry you can't see the background, because I'm sitting in what my sister would call grayish room. We do have very different styles.
So Dave, tell us more about the Garage Mahal thing. I mean, because I see things on Reddit and online where people point to cars that have all kinds of things glued to this paint, all kinds of things added to the car. And what I saw on the link you provided for the Garage Mahal site was not like that, right? I mean, on the one hand, the stuff you see online, people are pointing at those cars and saying this person has baby heads glued all over their car, baby doll heads glued all over their car. There must be some mental illness present, right? But that's not necessarily the case, right? We just may be looking at the punk rock equivalent of Car Driver.
I think that's exactly right. So the Art Car Museum, their manifesto really focuses on the thought that people express, people view the car as a canvas, and the work of Damian Hirst looks very different than the work of Monet, Van Gogh. It's still the same canvas, and I think we're like any art, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. Using your car as an expression of a Damian Hirst homage, or some of the things that you see in the Art Car Museum are actually gorgeous murals, Indian iconography, something that's very, very representative. Other things are, baby doll heads and beer caps or Legos painted to the car or glued to the car. And because I live close to Little Five Points, which in those of you not in Atlanta is our bohemian arts and counterculture district.
Yes, it's countercultural central. That's right.
Yeah, you are far more likely to see rolling baby doll heads and mannequin parts glued to a car in that neighborhood than something that is truly an artistic homage. But whether it's, decal flames or, Asian iconography or beer caps, there is a question of why would you do that to your car that I think is innately inherent with everyone. And I just found this a curious topic as I was thinking about it, because I have that reaction too.
And let's just say here too, if you're going to stick stuff all over your car, please, safety first.
Yes,
right.
Make sure it does not impede safe operation of the vehicle, and make sure that nothing falls off.
Right.
Because there is nothing more disturbing than having a baby doll head smash into your windshield as you're careening down Interstate 75.
That would make for a bad day. That's right.
Okay, I'm going to have nightmares tonight.
Yeah, no. So,
Flying baby doll heads.
Kathy, I have to ask, would you ever turn your car or a car into an art car, and what would you do to it?
See, I wouldn't have before this conversation, but now realizing that, it's my car and I'm going to run it into the ground anyway, I want to put brightly colored guitar picks all over my car now.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
That's the idea that strikes me. And they have all sorts of like novelty guitar picks. Like you can get guitar picks with like the Avengers on them and stuff like that. So now I'm I'm having ideas. This is dangerous.
So
Kathy, put the epoxy down.
So, Mary, I have to ask though, you're not going to decorate your Audi?
No.
Okay.
At least not now. It just came back from the shop after something hit it. So I'm like, it's been a great car, but it's been hit by a tree and it's been hit by stuff on 285. And no, it gets to stay in the garage.
It was hit by the tree, as in the tree was migratory?
Yes, the tree was migratory. Well, it was a very large branch.
Okay.
I had half of mine. I had half a mind some years ago to do a Honda that I used to own. I had an 83 Accord, which was that light metallic blue color that 80% of 80s Hondas came in. And the idea of, adhesive wrap was just kind of new at the time. This is in the early 90s. I think I was having this thought. I thought, instead of doing something really crazy, I was going to get some dots made in a dark blue that matched the interior and have them done in probably 3 different sizes. Just kind of stick them randomly on the car, not super close together. It'd be, subtle yet not subtle. I never did it, but it still seems kind of cool in my head. But I knew a guy at the time who was doing these camouflage schemes on cars, not just ordinary green, black, brown, hunter camo or military camo. But what he was doing was something that kind of resembled armor plate. And he would do it with white and gray and black spray paint. And he would use little O-rings on the end of a piece of cardboard, dip that in some paint to do, rivets on the car. And he would do anybody's car for, I think he said you had to give him $200 cash and so many pounds of Dreamland ribs. And this is back before Dreamland was all corporate, back when they were, little place in our town. And I thought about having him do that Honda too, but I didn't have the $200 to scrape together. So
I had a friend who every time she saw a car that was camouflage, she would just yell, "I can see you."
Right. Camouflage should never, ever be considered art.
Right.
Well, it depends.
In any iteration, certainly not on a vehicle.
It depends what you're camouflaging with. If you can actually disguise yourself to look like, I don't know, a Macy's, that might be art.
Right. The spotty stuff you go in the woods with. The redneck.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm reminded of
the redneck tartan.
The redneck tartan. That's hilarious. So I'm reminded of this thing that we've seen. We've talked about this on the Thing About Cars many months ago, maybe even years ago, about these extreme custom vans that we've seen in Japan that are just nuts. I mean, it's like a minivan with real Godzilla, like life-sized Godzilla spines arcing over the top of the van and down the back. The bumper gets extended in front of the van in a fiberglass shell for like 4 or 5 meters, not meters, but 4 or 5 feet in front of it. And I'll try to post some pictures online, but look up Japan minivan custom Rebel and you'll start to see these, or extreme Japanese custom vans, and you'll see pictures of what I'm talking about. These guys go crazy. A minivan that was 4 or 5 feet tall is now 9 to 12 feet tall, depending on what spines are coming out of the back of it. They trick out the insides, they trick out the outsides, and they're just massively, I mean, they're rolling works of art is what they are.
See, minivans is a whole new level to me, because like you've all seen like the wizard on the side of the van and things like that, but or maybe that's just me, I see wizards.
No, I know what you're talking about.
But minivans, that's awesome.
They're vans and they're minivans, and I confess I kind of want one.
Well, so I love Japan. In part, I love Japan because I'm not a particularly tall person, but in Tokyo, I am enormous. It just goes right to my head. The last time I was there, I walked down the Ginza and knocked over a department store.
You think you're enormous? I've been there too, and for listeners who don't know, I'm obnoxiously tall, and I've been over there and had trouble fitting in things. So another cool thing. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but in part, a minivan is an incredibly practical car there, because it's about as big as you can get into a lot of Japanese parking spaces and parking decks. And to Ben's point, Ben won't fit in an average parking deck. I find it uniquely Japanese, though, is that it's like we're decorating, a Toyota minivan, not any other type of car. It's like, I'm going to be totally expressive, but I still need something that's practical enough to haul the groceries in.
I love juxtaposition. I mean, it's
plus the fact that it is such a really conformist culture there.
It is.
Yeah. So I'm afraid we're derailing Dave's original cultural collision here about art cars in general. Dave, can you get us back on track?
Actually, I think I was hoping we would derail this. I was actually thinking that this would be a good one. But also, since Mary is a guest, I do think you ought to, challenge her with your usual set of hazing questions that we impose on new guests.
You got it. Mary, you ready for this?
Sure.
All right. Question number 1. What is your dream car?
It's got to be the 54 Mercedes Gullwing.
Wow. That's a nice
given its value these days, that stays in the dream category.
Yep. Excellent. All right. Nice choice. Question number 2. Where are you going on your next road trip?
I am talking to the girls now. We haven't scheduled it, but there are tree houses you can rent in Asheville. One of which is decorated like Harry Potter.
Nice.
One is a Hobbit hole. One is, there's like 6 or 7 of them. So we're looking to see when everybody can go and actually get one, because they appear to be booked out. But you got to love going to the mountains.
Heck yeah.
And staying in a tree house just sounds like a lot of fun. So that's a good excuse.
I have to ask, are these like, how big are these tree houses? We're talking multiple rooms and kitchens and bars and stuff like that, right?
Sleeps 4. Real have power, water. Yeah, we are not going to go camping in a tree house. That's not us.
Okay.
We will go and then go into the bars, and then somebody has to, stay sober and drive home.
Right.
99% of the time, that's me.
Enabler.
Yeah, there you go.
Question number 3. What's the most fascinating thing you've seen in someone's house or garage?
I'm going to actually take credit for this one my own self.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier that there's a paint hoarding in my family.
Yes.
And we were cleaning out the garage, and I was like, we got to do something with all this paint. And so I started spilling it kind of half on purpose on the really ugly, stained, oily ground from the 70s era house.
Yeah.
And then we started pulling it out, and it turned into one of the funnest days of my life. because we decided that it needed to be Jackson Pollock.
Oh boy.
So there is a Jackson Pollock garage floor, which I then had to come back and go, okay, we've got to put a sealer on this that makes sense. I had to go find the right, 2-part epoxy sealer for it, but it's stayed pretty well. It is just fun. It's by no means a garage Mahal. and Dave, please God, don't ever use those words anywhere in the vicinity of anybody I know.
Well, I think it would be a nice honorific kind of thing to have the Garage Mahal title. You don't like
really
that?
No. The problem is that if those words ever get used, there will now be ideas, and those ideas will then become mine to implement.
But it's art.
It is art.
And if you really want to name your garage after a tomb, go ahead. Although some people will find that pretty cool too.
Right. No, we'll have to come up with a different honorific for the garage.
Yes, yeah, because if her sister hears the term Garage Mahal, we're just minutes away from adding minarets to it.
Yeah. Well,
that will have to be painted pink, yellow, green, and purple.
Yes.
Maybe a little blue, but nothing darker than blue.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Oh, one last question for you, Mary. What kind of secret society would you like to start?
Ooh. Accountants with personality.
Nice.
A very small society.
There's 4 or 5 of us. Secret societies don't need to get big. They don't need to take over the world.
What would you guys do? Is it going to be like a secret handshake or something?
Oh, no.
No?
We're not going to touch each other.
See, I was thinking more along the lines of, secret signature cocktails.
Ah, yes. That's cool. Okay, so that's probably a topic for another show. But what does a secret accountant's cocktail mean?
Oh, geez. I just came up with the idea. I didn't actually go so far as to create the cocktail. I'll have to work on that.
Yeah, the Ledgertini.
The Ledgertini.
Yeah.
Balance sheet Balzac.
Yeah. See, all I do is serve them up for Libby. I serve them up for Dave.
The refund runner.
There you go. The refund runner. Very nice.
I got a note here from Ben. Ben says one more thing.
Oh, yes. Well, before we're done with art cars, there's one thing that is worth mentioning. If anybody wants to see kind of the other end of the spectrum, the less punk variety, but also kind of culturally significant, go and look up BMW art cars. This was something that started in the 1970s when one of their race drivers had an idea to have a well-known artist he was friends with paint up the race car.
Oh,
and they've done about 19 or 20 thereabout of them since then. They're mostly some have been real race cars, some have been just kind of for display purposes. They've done a few road cars as well, but they're all done by somewhat notable artists. The first one
that rings a huge bell.
Yeah, I'm looking at the first one was done by Alexander Calder, and they've also been done by Roy Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And a bunch of other, And I have seen a handful of these at the BMW headquarters on display. But look them up. They're pretty cool.
All right.
I had seen a documentary on that, and you just reminded me of it. It's been several years, but it was very cool.
Yeah.
That is real art. That's art on a car, not an art car, because those are different.
So here's an idea, Mary. Maybe the entire Nissan becomes an homage to different artists. You paint an enormous soup can on the hood for the salute Warhol, and
that's right.
That actually would be beyond cool. It would be beyond cool. I might have to actually invest in a cry cut and do it in vinyl stickies so that I can repair and replace as needed.
One side is Matisse, the other side is Renoir, the front is Warhol.
Right, right.
Both headlights
Starry
on one
Night on the back end.
Right.
Put both headlights on one side, the bumper on the other side for Picasso.
Right. Well, I'm worried that the tailgate will melt and become a Dali.
Mary, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll stick around for the rest of the show.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Let's put the spotlight on Cathy, who's is this a departure from art cars, Cathy? Can the Caprice be called an art car? No, I don't
think it was an art car more, but it did have a personality.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the first car I ever owned. Was a Chevy Caprice Classic, 1978. It was owned previously by a nun who was no longer with us. And so the son or nephew or some relative of the nun sold me the car. And in the front seat on the glove box, there was a plaque that said Sacred Heart Auto League. And I was like, I just want to get a plastic Jesus now and just like totally, nun this thing up. So we called it the Nunmobile, but it could go really, really fast it was a huge car.
It had an 8-cylinder engine in it, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm going to say yes, because I don't know a lot about cars,
Right.
but it was a really fast car. And so they called it the Flying Nunmobile after my friends saw how fast it could go. The one thing was, for such a huge car, it had a very unsatisfying horn.
Oh,
because it was like, you wanted someone to get out of your way. You felt like really big in this car and you're like, eep.
That was every Caprice. My college roommate had a Caprice that was about 5 years younger, and it'd come barreling up on it, and he'd hit the horn, and the car would go, hey.
Yeah, exactly. It's saying hi and just, So the other thing is, being so huge, if you wanted to take 8 of your closest friends out for a donut, that's the car you want.
yes.
In high school, there was like a big smoking area right off campus, and that's where we would park as well. And so all the smokers would sit on my car or whatever, and it was like in Lion King Pride Rock, except for smokers instead of lions. So they called it the Couchmobile as well. And so almost all the accidents I got into were in parking lots because it was so big I couldn't park the car. So it was you don't give a bad driver a big car. It's just a recipe for disaster. So I got my first speeding ticket in that car when I went, and my only speeding ticket in that car. And the cop pulls me over and says, you were speeding and you were going 87 in a 65. And I said, that's funny because my speedometer only goes up to 85. So I was unaware, which is not what you want to say to a cop. Let me just tell you, they have no sympathy.
I'm sorry, as a recovering Catholic, I just have to go on the record. Between the smokers on the hood and the speeding tickets, somewhere there is a nun rolling around in her grave.
Yes. So,
and she's warming up her ruler.
Oh, the funny thing is, I used to work out with a nun. Who was in a very progressive order, and I think I actually heard we used to do water aerobics together. And the pool was so cold one day, I think I actually heard her drop the F-bomb upon getting in, and I was like, okay, this is awkward. Okay. Anyway, but so when I went to court, first of all, I got the ticket. I went to college in North Carolina, and I got the ticket right in Concord, North Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte, or at least it is if you're doing 87. So I got the ticket and I went to court and I said, this is my first ticket. They said, well, you nailed it on the first try. It's just right there. And so the lawyer said, since it's a North Carolina courtroom, Your Honor, please be lenient on her. She learned to drive in Georgia. She doesn't know any better. And I was offended right up to the point where they reduced my mileage. And I was like, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So, but the thing is, I didn't know, I was never taught about car maintenance. So I think it was something that my dad figured I would get by osmosis or something like that. Like I would touch a car and know it needed an oil change or something like that. But so finally the Caprice died, and it died right in front of a BMW visitor center in like between Spartanburg and Greenville.
I know exactly
South
where you're
Carolina.
talking about. Yeah.
And I like to say it got to that point in the highway, looked to the right, lost the will to live, says I'm not worthy. And just, so that was back in the days where you had medians.
Yes.
Where, so we pulled off in the median. I was with a friend. And so we got the, and this guy pulls over to try to help us. And he made the brilliant move of taking the cap off the coolant container.
No.
And first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. Like, it was just this beautiful geyser of green. Just like, and we're like, I don't know why you just did that, but that's kind of amazing. So it's Old Faithful,
Big mistake.
On 85. So yeah. So we got it towed to this truck stop out the road, and we were going to call my parents, and we got this like 800 whatever phone card to call them, because this was in the days before cell phones and all that. And so my friend, goes to dial because she's telling her parents too. And so, and all of a sudden she hears, "Hi, do you like to talk dirty?" And she's like, "Ah!" and hangs up because she like misdialed or something. And, so finally, my parents come. We were all stressed. And then finally we're like talking to some woman and we're like, "No," click. And so finally.
Sister Mary. No, that's
yes, exactly.
I really was not expecting this story to start with a nun and cascade right into porn.
Yeah. And so finally, my parents come, we get the stuff out of the car. We're going to deal with it because it's late at night now. And, we're driving away, and I take one last tearful look at the Chevy Caprice Classic and realize, oh no, I left a pack of cigarettes in there. And that was the thought. And I was like, I have to have a more profound thought to the car. But really, I was just like,
was that the day you quit smoking?
No, I quit smoking like 10 years after that.
Okay.
But it was surreal. And I like, it's like that song from A Chorus Line, I felt nothing.
Yeah. Right.
But
so my question, Cathy, is why did it die? What happened? Did you ever get a word on that?
Was there an autopsy?
Yeah.
There was not an autopsy that I know of, or at least the news didn't get back to me. But when you don't change your oil for a long time and you don't do any maintenance on your car, eventually is now my cars ever since, now that I know about car maintenance, like they are well maintained because I don't want to go through that again.
Right.
But like no one ever told me about things like tune-ups and oil changes and things like that. So,
well, now you know plenty of people who do know about those things. So
yes.
Mickey, this actually may have won the worst car story award.
Well, and I mentioned this on the Facebook page. I replaced it. I went through my midlife crisis at age 21 after this car broke down, because I then broke off my engagement, bought a red Mustang, and started dating a younger woman. Yeah. So I figure, the fact that I didn't die at 42, I am just shocked, because midlife crisis is 21. Right. So I'm on borrowed time, I figure. So live life to the fullest.
Cathy, have I ever asked you our standard guest questions?
I don't think so.
You want to do them?
Sure.
All right. Question number 1. What is your dream car?
My dream car, I want an RV.
An RV?
I want an RV. I don't know what kind, because I don't know enough about RVs, but I like the idea of, I don't like flying just because, I'm a larger woman and I just don't like flying. I like driving and I like road tripping and things like that. So I want to if I want to, pick up and drive to Montana and visit a friend, I want a comfortable way to do so. So
okay, very cool.
But I would take a friend to drive it, because I can't park that thing. So
question number 2, where is your next road trip going to be?
I think there's this great little town that my friend Gynema lives in, and this is the one who yells at the cars with the camouflage. And it's called Red Lodge, Montana. It's outside of Billings, and they just don't care in this town. They have given their last, you know what, and they filmed Far and Away there, and there's this great story of, one of the restaurants was closed and Ron Howard and Tom Cruise are going there and they're like, you can't be closed. Do you know who we are? Yeah, you're Tom Cruise and you're Ron Howard and we're closed. But if you go down the street, Mimi's is a really great place to eat. So they just don't care.
Funny. That's too good. Okay. Number 3, what's the most fascinating thing that you have seen in someone's house or garage?
I work on a web series called The Campaign, and it's based on Dungeons and Dragons. And we have this guy who just builds sets for us. And so he's building a maze, like a dungeon maze inside of his garage for us.
Cool.
And I just think this is the coolest thing ever. And it has like swinging pendulums and, like all this neat stuff.
Are we talking about models here? Is this a model thing, Cathy?
No, this is like
full-sized
on the walls, modular, so you can shift it around and it could be different rooms, but it's a big maze inside of his garage.
Why do I not have this amount of time in my day?
I know. This guy is great. He built a little like Hagrid hut in his backyard, and we've used that to film, and just sorts of all. We say we want to do a market. And he goes, okay, I'll build it. And we're like, what do you mean? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Cathy. One last question for you. If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume you had done?
Please never.
If I was arrested with no explanation, my friends and family would assume that it would have to be some sort of performance-based thing. So I started singing or something in the middle of, the Marietta Square or something, and dancing, nothing lurid or burlesque or anything. Just I just often sing without knowing I'm singing, and so I would be arrested for performing without a license or something like that. And we're talking like a grand, spectacular, performance here, because I have been at gas stations singing Reba McEntire songs at the top of my lungs. And finally the person I'm with goes, oh, will you shut up? Do you know you're singing? And I don't even know it. So yeah, that would be it. Performance without a license.
Performance without a license. Cool. Thank you, Cathy. And thank you for telling us about the Caprice. May she rest in peace. He says maybe. Who knows? Before we go to Ben's segment, Mary sent us a note. She says, can I come back and compete for worst car story? I think the answer is obviously yes, but Mary, quickly tell us, what kind of car are we talking about?
The 1974 Austin Marina.
Okay, hold that thought. We'll definitely have to have you come back and talk about that car.
We will.
Yeah. Ben's going to take a moment. Ben, take it away.
Yeah, well, and it won't be a very long one since we are, kind of low on time here. But, of course, we're recording this on Valentine's Day, and nothing says loving like, 3 feet of snow on the ground, which is not a problem here in Atlanta, but in a lot of other parts of the country, people are having some weather lately. And so with that in mind, I'd just like to take a moment to have everybody, give a good thought to the humble snowplow. They run the gamut from little attachments you can stick on a lawn tractor all the way up to, gargantuan behemoths that clear railroad lines.
Yeah. And
they make life possible in a lot of places. Of course, they're also the bane of a lot of suburbanites because the snow on the road gets plowed right into their driveways and yards. But
and there's no getting around that either. I think, it's just one of those things. If you want the main road clear, you're going to have to do extra shoveling on your own driveway.
Yeah, and one friend of mine who lives in the suburbs of Denver many years ago, they had a real dumping there it was about 3 feet deep, and the plow came 3 days later, and it cleared basically one lane down the middle of his street. So everybody still had days and days of shoveling just to get where their cars could get into that one lane.
Right.
We don't think of them with as much in the way of vehicles. Nobody well, I don't know. Maybe in some parts of the country, somebody thinks their snowplow is sexy, but most people don't give much of a thought to them. But they're one of those types of cars, if we want to, or motor vehicle in general, if we want to stretch it, that without which life is impossible in certain circumstances. So.
Right.
Have you heard of the Scottish snowplows where they have the really cool names? Like we were talking about this last night at on a Zoom call, and my favorite is "You're a Blizzard, Harry," and they just have these really neat names and just
nice.
Yeah,
they are fantastic. There's actually, if you Google it, there is a map that shows the snowplows and their names or titles by location of where they are in Scotland.
Yes.
Wow.
That's right. You can track them real time. Yep. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to do a shout out for snowplow because I grew up in Ohio and I'm married to a Southern Beach boy. Garrett, my partner, was raised in Virginia Beach, and then we lived in Atlanta. First time I took him home for Christmas, we had a white Christmas. It was, it started snowing on Christmas Eve, and so after dinner, it was late in the evening. I'm like, come on, let's go out and walk in the snow. We go walk, and it's, parents lived in the country near a horse farm, and it's beautiful, quiet, peaceful. Snow is falling all around us. You can't hear anything except the gentle falling of it and starting to accumulate. And I'm very wistful of it. It's like, isn't it beautiful? And he looks at me and he says, if you trap me in Ohio with your parents, I will kill you. And about 5 minutes later, the snowplow came through, and he's like, "Oh, thank God!"
Well, thank goodness for snowplows. Yeah. There's probably some story of engineering or history or something of there that might be cool, or something like that. But everybody, be careful out there. If you've got bad weather happening around you, just stay put and take it slowly if you have to go anywhere, for sure. So, thank you, Ben.
Yeah.
Let's wrap the show. Let's do our grand trivia auto question. That question was, what did the Olds designation 442 stand for? Was it 442 laps around an endurance track? Was it 44 miles to go? Was it 4-barrel, 4-speed transmission and dual exhaust? Or was it 4 tires on the ground, 4 front-facing headlights, and 2 fun-loving people? Mary, why don't you answer first? What do you think?
I think it's the carbs.
You think it's the carbs?
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, what do you think?
I think it's number 3, with the dual exhaust and all that. Just, it sounds logical to me.
So you and Mary are on the same page there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I still shout out to Douglas Adams.
There you go.
Dave, what do you think?
So I never was in one of the cars. The 4-barrel car makes sense. Did it have 4 on the floor? I mean, that one seems to me the most logical, followed by the 442 laps.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read Ben's inscrutable facial expression. I'm going to go with the carbs too.
Carbs, all right, 4-barrel carbs. And Ben?
Yeah, me too. And I find it interesting that one of the choices was not the usual incorrect assumption that it was a 442 cubic inch engine.
Right.
Oh.
Which would have been amazing. But
yeah.
So everyone thinks it's 4-barrel carbs, 4-speed transmission, and a dual exhaust. And the answer is actually that it's got a 4-barrel carburetor, 4-speed transmission, and dual exhaust. So, so that's what 442 stands for. And I confess, every time I see one of those cars, I get kind of googly-eyed for a minute. I'm like, oh, gosh, that looks so nice. I kind of want one.
And it's important to remember, too, that was the original meaning, but it later became just kind of a trim designation.
Ah, okay. Got it.
Especially once carburetors were out of the picture.
Right. Well, that wraps us up. I'm sorry?
Have they ever made a 442 cubic inch engine?
I don't think GM has. I know there have been some pretty big ones, though.
I know that there are like 500 cubic inch engines, but they're not.
Yeah.
That would have been,
500s came in Cadillacs.
Right. So, but an actual 442, I don't think I've ever seen that in an engine size. So
No.
I'm pretty sure I had a 42 square inch engine.
Now there were some 454 Chevys.
Yeah, 454. That's right. But if anyone out in the listening world knows of a 442 cubic inch engine, please enlighten us. Mary, thank you for being our guest today. This has been a ton of fun. And every time I see an art car, I'm going to think of you.
Okay, that works for me.
Kathy, as always, thanks for joining us at the mic.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
And I hope we get to see you guys back at the table, especially Mary, who we need to talk about your Austin.
Yes.
Yes, we need to do that. In the meantime, to our listeners, thank you for joining us for the Thing About Cars. Please, if you have a moment, go to Apple Podcast or Google Podcast or wherever you hear the show and leave us a rating. That makes us more visible to other folks. Or support us on Patreon so we could, get better software and get better at editing for you guys. In the meantime, stay safe out there. We will see you with another episode in about a week. Take care, everybody.
Happy carting, y'all.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.